The Bundeswehr, federal defense, is the unified armed forces of Germany and their civil administration and procurement authorities. The states of Germany are not allowed to maintain armed forces of their own, since the German constitution states that matters of defense fall into the sole responsibility of the federal government. The Bundeswehr is divided into a military part and a civil part with the Armed Forces Administration. The military part of the Federal Defense Force consists of the Heer, Marine, Luftwaffe, Streitkraft basis, and the Zentrale Sanitätsdienst branches. As of 30 November 2015, the Bundeswehr has a strength of roughly 178,000 active troops, placing it among the 30 largest military forces in the world and making it the second largest in the European Union behind France in terms of personnel. In addition, the Bundeswehr has approximately 40,000 reserve personnel, with German military expenditures estimated at $46.5 billion. The Bundeswehr is among the top 10 best-funded forces in the world, even if in terms of share of German GDP, military expenditures remain average at 1.2% and below the NATO recommendation of 2%. History. Traditions. The Bundeswehr does not consider itself successor of the Reichswehr or the Wehrmacht and does not follow the traditions of any former German military organization. The official Bundeswehr traditions are based on three major lines. The military reformers at the beginning of the 19th century, such as Scharnhorst, Gneisenau, and Clausewitz. The members of the military resistance against Hitler, such as Klaus von Stauffenberg and Henning von Treschow, and its own tradition since 1955. As its symbol, the Bundeswehr uses a form of the Iron Cross. The Iron Cross has a long history, having been awarded as a military wartime decoration for all ranks since 1813, and earlier associated with the Teutonic Knights. The name Bundeswehr was proposed by the former Wehrmacht general and liberal politician Hasso von Manteuffel. One of the most visible traditions is the Grosse Zapfenstreich, a form of military tattoo that goes back to the Landsknecht era. Another expression of the traditions in the German armed forces is the ceremonial vow of recruits during basic training. Annually on the 20th of July, the date of the assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler by Wehrmacht officers in 1944, recruits of the Watch Battalion vow at the Bendler Block, where the officers had their headquarters, but recently the national commemorations in Berlin are now held at the grounds of the Reichstag, and there are similar ones held all over the Federal Republic on that day. The wording of the ceremonial vow of conscripts was and still is, "I pledge to serve the Federal Republic of Germany loyally and to defend the right and the freedom of the German people bravely. Ich gelobe, der Bundesrepublik Deutschland treu zu dienen und das Recht und die Freiheit des deutschen Volks tapfer zu verteidigen." Professional soldiers and officers of the Bundeswehr have to swear an oath with the same words, but beginning with "Ich schwor." Cold War 1955 to 1990. After World War II, the responsibility for the security of Germany as a whole rested with the four Allied powers: the United States, the United Kingdom, France and the Soviet Union. Germany had been without armed forces since the Wehrmacht was dissolved following World War II. When the Federal Republic of Germany was founded in 1949, it was without a military. Germany remained completely demilitarized and any plans for a German military were forbidden by Allied regulations. Only some naval minesweeping units continued to exist, but they remained unarmed and under Allied control and did not serve as a national defense force. Even the Federal Border Protection Force, a mobile, lightly armed police force of 10,000 men, was only formed in 1951. A proposal to integrate West German troops with soldiers of France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg and Italy in a European defense community was proposed but never implemented. There was a discussion among the United States, the United Kingdom and France over the issue of a revived German military. In particular, France was reluctant to allow Germany to rearm in light of recent history. However, after the project for a European defence community failed in the French National Assembly in 1954, France agreed to West German accession to NATO and rearmament. With growing tensions between the Soviet Union and the West, especially after the Korean War, this policy was to be revised. While the German Democratic Republic was already secretly rearming, the seeds of a new West German force started in 1950 when former high-ranking German officers were tasked by Chancellor Konrad Adenauer to discuss the options for West German rearmament. The results of a meeting in the monastery of Himmerod formed the conceptual base to build the new armed forces in West Germany. Hasso von Manteuffel, a former general of the Wehrmacht and liberal politician, submitted the name Bundeswehr for the new forces. This name was later confirmed by the West German Bundestag. The Bundeswehr was officially established on the 200th birthday of Scharnhorst on 12 November 1955. In personnel and education terms, the most important initial feature of the new German armed forces was to be their orientation as citizen defenders of a democratic state, fully subordinate to the political leadership of the country. A personnel screening committee was created to make sure that the future colonels and generals of the armed forces were those whose political attitude and experience would be acceptable to the new democratic state. There were a few key reformers, such as General Ulrich de Maizière, General Graf von Kielmansegg, and Graf von Baudissin, who re-emphasized some of the more democratic parts of Germany's armed forces history in order to establish a solid civil-military basis to build upon. After an amendment of the Basic Law in 1955, West Germany became a member of NATO. The first public military review took place at Andernach in January 1956. A U.S. military assistance advisory group helped with the introduction of the Bundeswehr's initial equipment and war material, predominantly of American origin. In 1956, conscription for all men between the ages of 18 and 45 was reintroduced, later augmented by a civil alternative with longer duration. In response, East Germany formed its own military force, the Nationale Volksarmee, in 1956, with conscription being established only in 1962. The Nationale Volksarmee was eventually dissolved with the reunification of Germany in 1990. Compulsory conscription was suspended, but not completely abolished as an alternative, in January 2011. During the Cold War, the Bundeswehr was the backbone of NATO's conventional defense in Central Europe. It had a strength of 495,000 military and 170,000 civilian personnel. Although Germany had smaller armed forces than France and the United States, Cold War historian John Lewis Gaddis assesses the Bundeswehr as perhaps world's best army. The army consisted of 3 corps with 12 divisions, most of them heavily armed with tanks and APCs. The Luftwaffe owned significant numbers of tactical combat aircraft and took part in NATO's integrated air defense. The Navy was tasked and equipped to defend the Baltic approaches, to provide escort reinforcement and resupply shipping in the North Sea, and to contain the Soviet Baltic Fleet. During this time, the Bundeswehr did not take part in combat operations. However, there were a number of large-scale training and operational casualties. The first such incident was in June 1957, when 15 paratroop recruits were drowned in the Iller River, Bavaria. German reunification 1990. After reunification of Germany in 1990, the Bundeswehr was reduced to 370,000 military personnel in accordance with the Treaty on the Final Settlement with respect to Germany between the two German governments and the Allies. The former East German Nationale Volksarmee was disbanded, with a portion of its personnel and material being absorbed into the Bundeswehr. About 50,000 Volksarmee personnel were integrated into the Bundeswehr on 2 October 1990. This figure was rapidly reduced as conscripts and short-term volunteers completed their service. A number of senior officers received limited contracts for up to 2 years to continue daily operations. Personnel remaining in the Bundeswehr were awarded new contracts and new ranks, dependent on their individual qualification and experience. Many were granted and accepted a lower rank than previously held in the Volksarmee. In general, the unification process of the two militaries, under the slogan, Armee der Einheit, has been seen publicly as a major success and an example for other parts of the society. With the reduction, a large amount of the military hardware of the Bundeswehr, as well as of the Volksarmee, had to be disposed of. Most of the armored vehicles and fighter jet aircraft were dismantled under international disarmament procedures. Many ships were scrapped or sold, often to the Baltic states or Indonesia. Reorientation. A major event for the German military was the suspension of the compulsory conscription for men in 2011. In 2011-12, a major reform of the Bundeswehr was announced, further limiting the number of military bases and soldiers. The last reform set a required strength of 185,000 soldiers. As of December 2012, the number of active military personnel in the Bundeswehr was down to 191,818, corresponding to a ratio of 2.3 active soldiers per 1,000 inhabitants. Military expenditure in Germany was at €31.55 billion in 2011, corresponding to 1.2% of GDP. German military expenditures are lower than comparable countries of the European Union such as France and the United Kingdom, especially when taking into account Germany's larger population and economy. This discrepancy is often criticized by Germany's military allies, especially the United States. In September 2014, the Bundeswehr acknowledged chronic equipment problems that rendered its armed forces unable to deliver its defensive NATO promises. Among the problems cited were dysfunctional weapons systems, armored vehicles, aircraft, and naval vessels unfit for immediate service, and serious spare parts shortages. In 2015, as a result of serious NATO-Russian tensions in Europe, Germany announced a major increase in defense spending. In May 2015, the German government approved an increase in defense spending from 1.3% to 6.2% over the following 5 years, allowing the Ministry of Defense to fully modernize the army. Plans were also announced to significantly expand the tank fleet to a potential number of 328, and order for 131 Boxer armored personnel carriers, an increase in the submarine fleet, and the development of a new fighter jet to replace the Tornado command organization. With the growing number of missions abroad, it was recognized that the Bundeswehr required a new command structure. A reform commission under the chairmanship of the former president Richard von Weizsäcker presented its recommendations in spring 2000. In October 2000, the Joint Support Service, the Streitkraft Basis, was established to concentrate logistics and other supporting functions such as military police, supply and communications under one command. Medical support was reorganized with the establishment of the Joint Medical Service. The combat forces of the Army are organized into 5 combat divisions and participate in multinational command structures at the corps level. The Air Force maintains 3 divisions and the Navy is structured into 2 flotillas. The Joint Support Service and the Joint Medical Service are both organized in 4 regional commands of identical structure. All of these services also have general commands for training, procurement, and other general issues. The Minister of Defense or the Chancellor is supported by the Chief of Defense and the service chiefs and their respective staffs in his or her function as Commander-in-Chief. Subordinate to the CHOD is the Armed Forces Operational Command. For smaller missions, one of the service HQs may exercise command and control of forces in missions abroad. The Bundestag must approve any foreign deployment by a simple majority. This has led to some discontent with Germany's allies about troop deployments, e.g. in Afghanistan, since parliamentary consent over such issues is relatively hard to achieve in Germany. Mission. The role of the Bundeswehr is described in the Constitution of Germany as absolutely defensive only. Its only active role before 1990 was the Katastropheneinsatz. Within the Bundeswehr, it helped after natural disasters both in Germany and abroad. After 1990, the international situation changed from East-West confrontation to one of general uncertainty and instability. Today, after a ruling of the Federal Constitutional Court in 1994, the term defense has been defined to not only include protection of the borders of Germany, but also crisis reaction and conflict prevention, or more broadly as guarding the security of Germany anywhere in the world. According to the definition given by former Defense Minister Struck, it may be necessary to defend Germany even at the Hindu Kush. This requires the Bundeswehr to take part in operations outside of the borders of Germany, as part of NATO or the European Union and mandated by the UN. Operations. Since the early 1990s, the Bundeswehr has become more and more engaged in international operations in and around the former Yugoslavia, and also in other parts of the world like Cambodia or Somalia. After the 11th of September 2001 attacks, German forces were employed in most related theaters except Iraq. Currently there are Bundeswehr forces in Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, ISAF 1,444 personnel, Kosovo KFOR 697 personnel, Turkey Operation Active Fence 251 personnel, Mediterranean Sea Operation Active Endeavour 171 personnel, Horn of Africa, Indian Ocean Operation Atalanta 293 personnel, Lebanon UNIFIL 136 personnel, Mali EUTM Mali 148 personnel, South Sudan UNMISS 16 personnel, Sudan UNAMID 10 personnel. In addition to the numbers above, 40 soldiers are on permanent standby for medical evacuation operations around the world in assistance of ongoing German or coalition operations. In support of Allied stabilization efforts in Iraq, the Bundeswehr is also training the new Iraqi forces in locations outside Iraq, such as the United Arab Emirates and Germany. Since 1994, the Bundeswehr has lost about 100 troops in foreign deployments. See also, German Armed Forces casualties in Afghanistan. Equipment. According to the new threat scenario facing Germany and its NATO allies, the Bundeswehr is currently reorganizing itself to realize growth in mobility and the enlargement of the Air Force's capabilities. The Bundeswehr is going to buy 53 Airbus A400M transports, as well as 140 Eurofighter Typhoon fighters and also several unmanned aerial vehicle models. 57 Eurocopter Tiger 100 NH-90 and 15 Special Forces helicopters are being delivered. For the ground forces, it plans to produce 350 Puma infantry fighting vehicle and started to introduce a novel land soldier system and a new generation of transportation vehicles and light vehicles, such as the Fennec, the Boxer MRAV and KMW Grizzly. Further, the German Navy is going to build 6 new corvettes, 4 new F-125 class frigates, 2 joint support ships and 6 Type 212 submarines, NH-90 helicopter, Boxer MRAV, Airbus A400M,